Hello, I'm Mascha Camino, and that's person. I have a laser. Okay. So, we're gonna talk about how to ignite that vision flame. What the fuck does that mean? We'll find out. We're gonna get to the conclusion to, we made this. So, what are we gonna yap about today? First of all, who's this person? Then it's like, who's this talk for? Then we're gonna talk about what would your game Spotify Wrapped look like. We're gonna talk a little bit about documentation, your thoughts, my thoughts, skull open, takeaways, and ducks. Let's get to point one. Woo! So, it's me. Now I can use pointer. What do I do? Why am I even slightly qualified to talk about any of the things to you? So, I do a little bit game design. I shipped a game called Curious Expedition 2 and some DLCs. It was really fun. Then I'm also doing game design for an unannounced project. I do a little bit of game writing for an unannounced project, and I do quest design for an unannounced project. I do like this. But also, I have met so many people in my life that make games, and all of them have different stories, obviously. I also organized a bunch of game events in Berlin mostly, like Germany was like the focus of it, like the Talk and Play, the Womanize, the Peace Game Jam, the Devolution, what else? Oh yeah, the Maze, more things, Femmes Fair, Civic Game Jam, and I'm funny, so I hope that helps, and depressed. So that's me. Okay, cool that we have that covered. That will guide you through the rest of the talk, I think. But who is this talk for? It's for this guy, and this guy only. No, it's for you, actually. And it's mainly focusing on designers. So everyone here, I hope, can take away something from it, who is like making a game or interacting with other humans, should be able to get some sort of message from this, I hope. But I will, again, like focus, it's not a funny talk, not like the previous talk. You're gonna learn things with slides that are not as funny. But still, it's mainly for designers, and we focus a lot on the workflow of game designers and team leads. We're gonna look at teams who are struggling to find a coherent vision and teams who are struggling to make people feel included in the project. So a lot of the concepts can be translated to any team size applicable, big or small, so it doesn't have to be 450 people team. It can also be a one-person you team. So yeah, your game Spotify Wrapped. What does it look like? Hopefully not AI, because that was so shit. But like, what type of girly is your game? What makes your game chuckle, and what is your game interested in? So basically, what's your game's character? And you might be thinking, oh, my game is so complex. My game is so different than any other game, and I'm making a very technical game with no story and extremely intricate gameplay mechanics. Okay, that's really cool. So your game eats chocolate mint ice cream, listens to Zelda lo-fi, and drinks black coffee, and can't stop talking about that. But what do I mean by this? Sometimes it just helps to characterize your game in order to convey to other people, especially in your team. Because I'm sure the game looks epic in your head, but we haven't quite gone to the point yet where we can show other people exactly what we have up there, which would be scary and cool, I think. But therefore, we're bound to images, sounds, and whatever else that can be perceived. So create an identity for your game to share that with other people, and specifically as designers, I forgot that it's animated. Specifically as designers who are like an intersection of all the teams, that is super important to work on that communication skill. And yeah, as you've seen, if you've seen the previous talk, fantastic talk, then you have also now found another triangle to put your games into that can be an identity too. So yeah, it's very hard to care about something if you can't imagine if you can't imagine it and it has no character. So, documentation. Don't be frightened, documentation cannot hurt you. I love documentation. And whenever I joined a new team, something I noticed was how far left behind you can feel, because so many things have already happened oftentimes in the game. If you're not joining for pre-production, so many decisions have already been made, and you probably don't understand all of them. And you might be thinking, oh, wouldn't this be like such a cool idea for the game? And then someone will be like, no, we tried this already, and you're like, oh, okay, so maybe let's not try that then. But it would be so cool if you can read up about it and see why it didn't work, understand, and then, So the way you want to learn about a game's world design, you also want to learn about a team's and a project's world design. And everyone has already probably worked with a team that had this one guy where you were asking, hey, how does this and this work? And someone was like, oh yeah, Jeff knows. And said, okay, good for him. But is that written down somewhere? And they're like, no, like Jeff knows. Like, okay, love that for Jeff. But still, it would be great to have that written down somewhere or like have it documented in some way. So we're going to look a little bit about at what we can do with that sort of documentation. And it can also help if you're working with practical Germans to make them happy. I don't know if you want that, but it is a thing. So, documentation. I know it is super annoying, and especially the upkeep is something that keeps a lot of people from, not doing it in the first place. But let me tell you a couple of benefits, maybe, that could maybe convince you to think otherwise. So first of all, it is very easy, accessible information for your team. And it sounds so obvious, but it's just very important to have places where people can go and look at stuff that you have thought out. I know. It improves the workflow, it enables people to ask very specific questions, and as soon as people understand the project so well that they can actually ask intricate questions, it makes them feel better as designers as well, and about the contents of the game that you're making. It sets overall terminology, and it makes it much easier to communicate. And it also can get you out of a design slump. So what I sometimes like to do when I feel stuck with my design and I'm like, I don't really know how to progress with this, then I write documentation. I pretend as if I'm pitching it to someone, pitching it to publisher, pitching it to creative director, pitching it to my colleague. Just to write it out and then see what is actually there. And oftentimes I can then understand, oh my god, why did I think this is a good idea? This is like so ass. Let's cut it and let's go around it and have it framed in a very like clear and subtle way. Cut all the yap that you don't need. So yeah, maybe that helps you too. I find it quite practical, and everyone who knows me knows I love practicality. Documentation disadvantages. So the upkeep is most likely permanent, so you always have to be running after your documentations and be like, okay, we wanted to do this, didn't work, that's just iteration, that's just game making, but you will have to allocate some time to go over some documents to make sure people aren't looking at old versions. It can be convoluted if you have like too many areas in which you keep your documentation, and it is also connected to a good structure. So that means you cannot just have a bunch of very well-designed Google documents or a great Miro board, but no access to it like anywhere. Like none of your team members know where to find any of the things. So you have to also connect those two things. And then the German might be happy, which again, depending, like we usually try to avoid that, but so let's read this. I think one thing that I've noticed is there is a big difference between lightweight and heavyweight documentation. So you will want to look at who is supposed to, because we all know that here I got sent this super long document, go and read it, and you're like, I would rather, but you're not gonna. So you have to find a way to make documentation for the people that should read it. Not everyone needs the same sort of information, but we all need to know about the game that we're making. And there's a difference between lightweight and heavyweight documentation. What I love to do is have documentation that resembles, specifically for quest design, the engine that I'm working in. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an example. This is like a quest that we're like looking at, and that can be sent to literally whoever in the team, and we'd be like, okay, I'm going to find a corpse, I'm going to encounter someone, find a mention, blah, 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 blah. These are the steps. So everyone understands what we're going to do, everyone is on the same page. But if I want to show my quest to another quest designer, and I know that they're interested in a different way, the same quest can look like this. It's, as you can tell, pretty different, but it's very beneficial to the person that is seeing this document and like having a bit more information, and a different way of documenting it. And then again, this is how it's going to look like in the editor. So as you can see, having the notes is oftentimes very practical for me then to also realize how I want to build it again in the engine, right? And the thing is, as I said, different departments require different forms of information, because that same quest can also look like this, or like this, or like this. Yeah, so I think it is very usually to have your documentation in different areas, and especially like at Gorilla, for instance, we have our documentation in 3-4 different sources. So we have documentation about the editor found in the editor. You have quest information in like Miro, and then you have like combat design stuff in other areas as well. It is very normal, so don't shy away from thinking like, oh, I need to press this information in this tool. You don't have to do that. You can choose different options. Just make sure that you have one hub to find all of that. But yeah, again, like, so you want to cater to the people that you want to care about your project, and that is bestly done when you understand them and how they're gonna read what you write. And so then I have like one example that I personally found very practical and helpful when I was designing any sort of design document. I call it design pitch, but it can be literally whatever. These are just things that I think are very good to have in your document. It's like the goals, what do you want with this feature, then a user story, a definition, like the definition of terms used in the document, then talk about your feature. It's hopefully going to be the biggest part. Then future questions, because you've probably also thought of things that you haven't been able to implement yet, but you have thought about them. And that also oftentimes sparks interest or like ideas in your peers. Well, that's pretty cool. Oh yeah, and then past decisions if applicable. So if this is something that has gone through a couple of iterations, as I said before, if you have some lightweight things to say, just put them in there. I think that's super helpful, especially when you come to a project like when I came to Gorilla, and the project was already in development for, can I say, for some years. And I was like, okay, this is just such a big chunk of game. How am I supposed to make sense of that? And then seeing like the documents that have been made like a couple years back, and I looked through them by myself, but it would have been really easy to distill them and just like, this didn't work because, this didn't work because. And that's just, yeah, I find that super helpful. And then documentation doesn't have to be just text. It can be literally anything. It really depends on who you need to show your stuff. So this was something that needed to be shown to environment artists. It was like a mood thing, it was like a little bit of a level that was built out. And we had like some, here you're gonna go there and there, you're gonna supposed to see this, and there's a quest item that you're gonna pick up, here you're gonna see blah, blah, blah. And this is just a bunch of pictures, and it was exactly what they needed. They didn't need a bunch of words or whatever, they needed the mood and the pictures, and it was also then easier for me to not overthink every single word that I'm telling them to make sure it's gonna be in the game. But also, this is what a quest looks like, for instance, anyone who cares. It's a big thing. As you can tell, it has many different steps. And some people want to look at this. Some people in your team want to look at this, 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 this. But it's cool to have it all in one board, because if you're interested in it, you can look at it if you want to. And you can also plan your D&D campaign like this, which I find also very practical. Next point is skull open. What do we mean by this? It's having an open mind, but I'm super funny, as I pointed out in the first slide. So receiving ideas from your team is crucial into making a game you all care about. Seems very obvious, but some people I've worked with have never heard of that concept, so I pointed it out here. And sometimes a colleague has a better idea for a thing that you're working on than you. And that's okay. That's actually really fucking cool, because then you can, combine it and, harness that creativity together. And do not, try to not get dismissive about it and let your pride get in the way, because absolutely not worth it. You're working with talented people, and that's just a fact. It can be hard sometimes to find the balance between this is the game's vision and this is what we're needing. We need to move into this direction, and this is a very cool idea, and it would improve the overall experience tremendously, but it is a little bit of a different thing. So make sure to communicate this concern attached into changing the design, but if you can, depending on time and budget, just try things out. This will also make your team members feel heard and respected professionally when you take their opinion seriously and are like, yeah, actually haven't thought about that, want to actually try that out. Ooh, look at this guy, he made this. Yeah, and this is a creative director or like flame keeper, vision keeper, or whoever. Whoever. It doesn't mean you suck at your job if you don't always have the final plan of what's going on. Like, it doesn't make you a bad designer. It's not a weakness to communicate this to your team either. To be like, hey, I don't know about this. Like, I haven't thought about that. That doesn't mean you suck. It's just really important that you talk to your team about this. And as the flame keeper, you're here to rekindle your team's place. And when you can tell people are losing their way, just sit down with them and just yap about the game. It's my favorite thing to do. Just think about all the things your game can be. Think about all of the out-of-scope things you can never ever do, but it would be so fun if you could, you know? Just see your game in the light the best it could ever be. I think it goes a long way, and it will make your vision embers crackle. So, yeah, I think that's a very important yap about your game, that's what I'm saying. Then feedback, or the art of saying, this sucks. And I would say learning how to give and receive good feedback is one of the most important things in making a game as a team. I think we've all been at this point where we thought, this is such a good idea, I'm so looking forward to seeing this in the game, and then it's going to be cut. And you're sad and devastated and never touch a game again, and that's just not how it goes. So be mindful of your peers' work and their effort, because different things are differently difficult for other people. Sometimes you would think, this is so easy, why did it take so long? So maybe it wasn't that easy for the person who made it. So be mindful of that. And it's also the boiling pot for creating amazing collaborations and creating truly shared products. I had the best ideas and design discussions after just spitballing ideas with my colleagues. And we looked at the game, we're like, what we're making is actually so cool. So that's really nice. And I want to introduce you to one cool concept that we use at Gorilla, and I personally learned to love a lot, which is just a great concept. My colleague Blake Ricochet introduced this to the team. So we're the world content team. It's like a shared division between level designers, quest designers, just a bunch of people that do some sort of design. And this is a thing that they derived from Richard Lemachar's book, A Playful Production Process. I don't know if you read that, but it works like this. Every so often, people are presenting what they're working on to the team, and I know that sounds intimidating, but it's great. And this is mostly other team members within the same division. So within the content design division, we would present to one another, the combat designers to the combat designers, environment art, you get it. But it can also be done in a broader group, especially when you're in a smaller team, because, maybe you're just one designer and talking to yourself is kind of fun, but maybe not that helpful. So how does it work? Now they made this. It's not just he made this, they made this. So it's called Purities. And you should do it every so often, maybe you could do once a month, every 2 months. And it starts with, I like. It sounds pretty simple, but it sets a great precedent to the mood of the meeting. These meetings should allocate an hour, and the person is, let's say, presenting a quest. And you play through the quest. You have, let's say, 3 people in the team just play through the quest, and you watch them play, and everyone in the meeting is writing down, I like, and then I wish, what if. And so I like works, obviously, you're gonna just note down things that you liked about the quest. And I think it's just a good action point, because it's so much easier to hate on things than to actually think about what was nice about it. And it also values the effort of your colleague. And then you do, I wish, an example would be, I like that the path was clear, the options I had within the level were easy to grasp. I wish, this is what comes closest to criticism, but it's not really what we need here. But it just gives people the option to engage with the content differently. They didn't build this, but they have to understand what we're working on and have a better understanding of the game in general. So I wish there had been a reward for exploration, specifically when I went here and there, for instance. then what if, and I think this is my favorite point, this might be one of the most important bits. Here, everyone in the team actually has to come up with their own ideas. And it's also, firstly, reminding everyone it's not that easy to come up with an idea on the spot. And it then leads to a truly shared product, which is really beautiful. So what if the lever that you can pull also rises the water level? So you open the door and also the water rises. Something like that. So showcasing what you're working on can be pretty intimidating. I think all of us know that feeling. And it's a very vulnerable action. But setting these points, I think, really helps making it a safer experience for everyone and more of an exciting thing to do. And I love being excited. So it's preferred to have these reviews on a scheduled, reoccurring event, but not every time the same person, obviously. And then this designer after, who was presenting it, will present or prepare a little document depending on how big your team is. You might send this to your creative director or to whoever, and translate the action items that have been given to them by the watching designers into a must fix, maybe fix, and new ideas. Super practical. There's also something called Mascha prioritization categories. They're very similar to what we're using. And yeah, the beauty of this is you get something completely new, touched by everyone in the team. And I think it's so cute because sometimes when you then have the next peer review and you see the quest again and then someone in the team is like, why you put in what I told you? And it's like, yeah, because it was such a nice idea. And they're like, oh, that's so cool. So they didn't work on the quest. There's something of themselves like in that same quest. And I think that is really great. It feels awesome. And the ownership still lies within the same person, so they have the unique opportunity to do the ideas of their colleagues and peers justice, which is also not that easy. Okay, so let's just wrap it up, do some takeaways. Takeaways, I'm also German, by the way. Obviously, sometimes the job is just the job. But if you want to foster the feeling of creating something amazing together, and I think these practices can help you and your team just looking at it again collectively and thinking like, we made this, this is so cool. I care about this is so cool. And it's beautiful in my opinion. I think it's clear, but I also still need to say this is not a guide on how to manipulate your team emotionally.
Too late.
Where am I? And then it's help people understand your game. This will make them care. Understanding the game will make them care. It is our nature to abstract things, but as humans we love understanding things, and therefore just give your team the option and guidance to do that. Then invest time, whether it is in documentation, in feedback, in yapping about the game. Literally take the fucking time, because you will pay for it later with time if you don't do it. So there will be no time saved with not taking the time. Then peak documentation, like everything has a peak documentation form. You don't have to use the same documentation form for every single information that you want to provide. Different things work for different things. And yeah, you make a team together. And I think Alex has also touched upon this in her talk. But yeah, you are not doing this alone most of the time. If you care about the people that you make the game with, they will also care about you and your project. And it goes a super long way. So think about the you as in plural you. It's not just you, but it's you. And you making the game together. So after all this time, using the practices, and you come to say, no one cares about the game, well then you should think about why that is and maybe just reflect on that a little bit. Because look at these guys. They made this, so that is awesome. Yeah, so I think that's basically all I have to say to this. So here's ducks, and tag yourself.